don't you think that it is in most investors' best interest to include an asset class into their investment mix that is going to provide them with stability during times when financial assets are under stress?
Hello, everyone. Timothy Nihill here on the Twin Shores Financial Freedom Podcast. Thank you very much for liking, subscribing, viewing, et cetera, et cetera. This episode here is a very, very interesting episode with our friend Donald D., who is a colleague of ours that works at Rare Coins of New Hampshire. So what are Rare Coins? Obviously collectibles, numismatics, but we also do a lot of physical transactions in the purchasing of gold and silver through Donald and his firm up in New Hampshire. So we've known Donald for a long, long time. We've had some fantastic conversations with him. He is huge fans of ours, as we are huge fans of his. So if it sounds like a little bit of a commercial, we did not pay him at all. But our feedback for people when looking at the commodity space and the physical space is twofold. One, if you're going to go down the purchase and the path of purchasing, go down the path of purchasing physical assets, it's really important that you do it with people that you know you can trust. So you're not sending your money to someplace in Miami and only getting half of it back. So that's one of the reasons we do all of our work with Rare Coins in New Hampshire and Donald. The second part of that, and this is a question everybody should be asking because it's going to happen very, very soon. When your money goes 100% digital and there are no more cash and coins, are you going to feel safe? And what are you going to have stored in your house, in your safe, under the mattress, just in case one day your money disappears off the internet? So I think that is a very, very valid question, especially with the launch of the FedNow program. I think with central bank digital currencies that are going to be used and coming to us all over the world. At the end of the day, I know that I'll gain for money online, but at the end of the day, I like to have my safety net too. And so I think we're going to see a big, big opportunity and a huge, huge run in the physical gold, silver, and collectible coin space. So enjoy the content. Please like, subscribe, comment, share feedback, engage. We appreciate it. Thank you very much and enjoy the ride.
Before we begin today's presentation, I'd just like to thank Tim Nihill and Tim's entire team at Twin Shores Wealth Management for inviting me to participate in today's podcast. As Alex had mentioned, my name is Donald D. I'm the director of the Financial Services Division of our firm, Rare Coins of New Hampshire. And we've been in business now for 33 years. We were founded in 1990, and we've built a reputation over the years of which we're very, very proud. And it has enabled us to work with some very sophisticated and distinguished, knowledgeable financial firms like Tim and his group. I think before we begin our actual discussion, I think it's important for listeners to understand a little bit about our firm and what we do. Because quite frankly, not all precious metals and numismatic firms are created equally. Engaging in this asset class can be an extremely profitable area, especially now, given the current dynamics of today's economy and so forth. But it is vitally important for investors to align themselves with precious metals and numismatic firms to garner the results that everybody is looking for. Again, our firm was established in 1990, and we provide industry-recognized expertise in the physical possession of all precious metals and numismatic coins. We custom design investment portfolios, working with Tim and his group, we custom design investment portfolios that best meet the needs of Tim's clients. The fact of the matter is, what is good for one particular client may not be good for another. And working in conjunction as a member of Tim's team to learn more about the client's objectives, their time horizon, their risk tolerance, and so forth, we can custom design that portfolio to meet individuals' needs. We appraise precious metals and numismatic coin portfolios. As a matter of fact, there may be some listeners here today that currently have a position in precious metals or numismatics. And quite frankly, they are unaware of what the current market value of those collections happen to be. Would be more than happy to provide that appraisal service for Tim and his clients. We manage our clients' investment portfolios at different points in time. We can provide written evaluations and appraisals for precious metals and numismatic portfolios that we have constructed. And we've also certainly there to manage the liquidation expectations for clients as well, to maximize the profits at time of liquidation. As I mentioned when we began our discussion, Rare Coins of New Hampshire has built a reputation of which we're very, very proud over the years. Because of our reputation, we've been able to work with some very exclusive organizations and individuals. We are the firm of choice, for example, for Virginia Tech University.
You really brought up Virginia Tech, Donald. I'm a Georgia Tech grad. I can't do that.
I'm sorry about that, Tim.
No, I'm just kidding. Tech's a great school.
One of the graduates of Virginia Tech was an avid precious metals and numismatic collector and investor. And he wanted to gift part of his metals portfolio back to the university. We were brought in for our expertise in order to appraise the collection, and we were able to subsequently help with the liquidation and gifting of funds over to the university. The Gettysburg Foundation of Pennsylvania, another client of ours. Utah Valley University. It's a very interesting situation. We had a financial advisor in Salt Lake City who I've worked with very closely over the years, who is affiliated with the university. Similar to Virginia Tech, they had a graduate who wanted to gift precious metals back to the university. We were called in to assist with that whole operation, with the liquidation and the subsequently gifting of the funds. And it was interesting because last fall, the university reached out to me. The dean of the business school at Utah Valley reached out to me to see if I would be interested in going back to the university as a guest lecturer and talking about precious metals and numismatic coins to the graduate students at that school. It was a great experience, and I'll tell you, walking away from that experience and having the opportunity to engage with those students who were so smart, so involved, I walked away with the feeling that if these young men and women are the future of the financial services industry, we're in really, really good shape. So it was a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's funny because you know, and I know because we've been around the block a few hundred times. I mean, we've had the conversation of baby boomer this, baby boomer that, and listen, it's not not say that the baby boomer generation's not important, but when you look at this next generation of young professionals, graduates, and kids coming out of schools, especially with the access that they have for technology and mathematics and things like that,
Yeah.
I think it's a very, very, very positive thing. And I think we're going to see just some tremendous things come out of our society, and and especially in the financial world. We're going to transform. We're transforming the financial world as we speak.
No doubt.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I think it's important. I think, Donald, we should touch on that for a second, because okay, if you watch the news at all, or financial channels, or even, whatever, you're always seeing ads for buy silver, buy gold.
Yeah.
And that's the importance of partnering with someone like a Rare Coins in New Hampshire. You don't know what you're getting from random people who are just advertising, right? And saying, hey, buy silver and gold through us.
You're absolutely right. We have a legal team here at the firm, and we partner up with law firms around the country to assist with precious metals and numismatic investors who have been wronged by some of these unscrupulous firms. Engaging in this asset class can be extremely profitable, as we all know, if it is done properly. And it can be a catastrophe as well if it is not done properly. If there's a common problem, Tim, and I know you and I have discussed this in the past, if there's a common problem that we observe at our end with investors these days, it is that rather than seeking the professional assistance of you and your firm and financial advisors in general, sometimes investors go out there on their own, on the internet, and acquire precious metals and numismatic coins at what appear to be a good price.
Cheaper prices.
Absolutely. Yeah. And although, as you know, all too well, Tim, purchase price is an important component to an astute position in precious metals or numismatics or any investment vehicle. But it's not the only component. Right. And it's really sad sometimes because, investors who act on their own sometimes wind up shooting themselves in the foot because they acquire metals online that are more often than not either, number one, out of market favor. Some of these metals can be physically impaired, which results in trading at lower levels at the time of liquidation. Or in some extreme cases, Tim, we've seen clients who have purchased counterfeit issues.
How often does that happen?
Far too frequently, far too often than it should. We have multiple instances that are brought to our attention on a monthly basis, and it's really a shame because it doesn't have to be that way. As I mentioned, this asset class can be extremely profitable if it is done properly. And your clients should be thanking their lucky stars for having the opportunity to work with you because of your connections and your affiliations within this asset class, so that you, working with our firm, can enable those investors to safely and effectively engage in this asset class. It sounds simple, but unfortunately, all too frequently, it doesn't work that way. And that's one of the main values that we bring to the picture.
Right. and like Alex Krieger and I here, we go back and forth on this stuff, almost every other day now.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Monster boxes.
Right, monster boxes, you know, all that fun stuff. But it's when you think about it in the education system, like fundamentally, most people don't fundamentally know much, if anything, about finance, especially personal finance.
Right.
And we have a friend of ours that's launching a movie called The Money Game, and we were talking about this with them. Everyone thinks that a safe haven is the bond market and cash instruments in the U.S. dollar, which we can talk a little bit about that for sure, because it's applicable. But I feel like we've really, really gotten away from fundamentals.
I agree.
And I'm an athletic person, and I don't care. You could have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have the baseline fundamentals, it only gets you so far. And I think physical gold and silver has really gotten lost in the translation over, I would say, the past 20, 25 years.
It has, Tim. It has. But I'll tell you what, I think with economic events, particularly since 2008, particularly since the financial crisis, I think the value that the physical possession of tangible assets, the value that it brings to a well-constructed financial strategy, is becoming more and more appreciated. I know that this asset class now is welcomed in many financial circles where it was not welcomed in the past. As you know, the broker-dealer affiliation for Twin Shores has done a very, very extensive due diligence review on our firm. And they are very comfortable with the value that we bring to the table. But, let's face it, we're living in a very, very high-risk, high-anxiety economic environment today.
The anxiety, I like that one.
It's true. I'm sure you would agree. The anxiety level is sky high, and for good reason. Where you pick up the Wall Street Journal and you're reading about bank failures, both here in the United States and in Europe. Jamie Dimon, not long ago, from J.P. Morgan, in a Wall Street Journal ad, said that, in his opinion, we haven't seen the last of bank failures. We're looking at the highest inflation rate in over 40 years. We're looking at a national debt exceeding $31 trillion,
which is about.
That's true. That's true. It's rising at exponential levels. The fundamental appeal of the U.S. dollar for international trade is coming under threat. We're in a very, very, again, high risk environment, and as a result, not only are individual investors, but institutional investors and even world central banks are looking to protect their assets in this type of environment. And historically, the physical possession of tangible assets has been the asset class that provides that safe haven and provides that potential for appreciation in this type of environment. So the demand for precious metals right now is extremely strong. If you go back, Tim, to 1990, the year our firm was established. In 1990, there was the economist by the name of Harry Markowitz who won the Nobel laureate that year in economics. And I know you know the name. Perhaps some of the listeners do not. but he was the father of the modern portfolio theory. Modern portfolio theory is a fancy way of talking about diversification. And Mr. Markowitz, again, the Nobel laureate, perhaps said it best. He said that the function of gold in a diversified investment portfolio is to serve as a defensive asset class. The appreciation of gold can be expected to be proportionate to the depreciation in financial assets during times of economic, financial, political, and military turmoil. That's the value that the physical possession of precious metals and numismatics bring to a well-structured financial strategy.
Now, we happen to be checking the box on all four of those things right now.
We are. Absolutely. Economic challenges, to be sure. Financial challenges, absolutely. Political challenges, the political environment is a mess. I don't care what side of the political platform you're on, what side of the political street you're on. I think everybody can conclude that it's a mess out there. The military turmoil. I mean, you're looking at the Russia-Ukraine situation, among others, with Korea, ramping up its nuclear capabilities and flexing its muscles. The environment is very challenging.
Yeah,
and as a result, again, the demand for precious metals and numismatics these days is certainly at a high point. And again, we enable clients to engage in this area to help protect them from this economic environment by constructing portfolios in conjunction with you and your team that are in your client's best interest.
And talk about that, Donald. So what's the process behind, going out there to the market and purchasing precious metals, and why it's important to know the people you work with and understand the difference between that
Sure.
and kind of going off and doing it on your own?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, we have expertise on both the precious metals and the numismatic sides of the street. On the precious metals side, Tim, we work with many responsible, sophisticated precious metals distributors all around the country, including U.S. Mint distributors. What we do when a client is looking to allocate into the precious metals side of the street, we access our network of metals distributors to acquire the metals, tier 1 quality metals.
There are different tiers?
There are, based upon the overall state of preservation of those metals. It kind of gets back to my original point. In some cases, clients go online and act on their own and acquire precious metals that appear to be at unrealistically low price levels and jump at what they think is an opportunity, when in fact there is no Santa Claus in the precious metals area. If there are metals that are being offered at what appear to be sub-market levels, there's a reason for that. And those metals can be, as I mentioned, metals that are out of market favor, that are not traded very frequently, or metals that are physically impaired, that trade at lower levels than tier 1 quality types of material. So all those facts are extremely important, and it is imperative that investors work with the right firms. So when it comes time to allocate into this area, we access our network of precious metals distributors, acquire the right forms of metals for our clients at the most favorable market levels that we can.
Right. And I think that's the big deal because you don't really, right? And I'm talking as on my own portfolio, right? Because I'm an investor myself,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
y'all are, and it's like, it's not necessarily about the buying of it, but it's when you go to liquidate that's really where the rubber hits the road with the quality of the metals that you have in the portfolio that you have.
That's right. Not only with the quality, but with the types of metals that you have as well. Sometimes investors think that an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold, regardless of its origin, regardless of where you get it from, that they're all valued at the same price levels and all offer the same benefits. And that just is not the case. There are some forms of precious gold in the open market, for example, that we would strongly caution against investors acquiring. First thing,
What would that be? Yeah, I'm curious.
first thing that comes to mind are gold bars. Right now, there has been an influx of counterfeit gold bars, primarily from China, that have created a problem to the point where responsible financial firms, precious metals firms, do not want to engage necessarily in gold bar.
So are they just buying? They're buying those.
Virtually all of them have to be tested. In some cases, Alex, yes. And ultimately, what happens at the end of the process, because these gold bars are not in market favor, they can be liquidated, but they are liquidated at lower price levels than the more traditionally traded forms. You bring up American Eagles, for example, such as American Eagles.
So you mean
There are other,
with something you think is worth $50,000 and you go to trade it in and they say, hey, here's, $2,500.
Yeah. Now that's an extreme case, Tim, to be sure, but nevertheless,
It's actually worth 30, 35.
Yeah, those cases actually exist. Particularly on the numismatic side of the street. When you get into rarity and so forth, it is imperative that clients acquire numismatic coins that are accurately graded, that are authentic at fair market price levels. If clients do acquire those types of metals and numismatics, there is a huge profit potential to be made. But like anything with any asset class, it has to be done properly.
Right.
And that's what working with you enables your clients to do, is to eliminate all of those potential headaches and pitfalls and engage in the right products at the right price.
Yeah, and especially for any audience members that are out there listening, numismatics are rare coins, right?
That's correct.
So Donald, talk about the rare coins a little bit. Like, that seems to be a really fun part of the business to get involved in.
It is.
What's it like out there when you're shopping for things, and how do you find it, and where do these things come from?
It's a lot of fun, to be honest with you, Tim. It really is. With this environment, investors again are very worried, and usually the knee-jerk reaction is, okay, I'm concerned about what I'm reading. I'm concerned about what I'm hearing and seeing. I guess I need to get myself some gold. That's how the psychology usually works. And although that isn't necessarily the wrong decision to make, if it is done through your guidance, but there are also other options that are available to investors that may make more sense to them. Other forms of precious metals, silver, for example, platinum, and you bring up numismatics. Numismatic coins are issues that usually are produced in a precious metals form, usually gold or silver. But the added appeal to numismatics is they have an added rarity factor associated with them over and above their intrinsic metallic value.
Sure.
So, ostensibly, if the price of gold rises from $2,000 to $2,500, the value of your 1 ounce, actually it's 0.96 ounces, $20 gold piece, numismatic gold piece, will potentially rise as the price of gold increases because it happens to be made of that precious metal. Again, with $20 gold pieces, 0.96 ounces. But if the value of gold, of spot gold, drops from 2,500 to 2,000, the downward pressure on numismatic coins is far less than the downward pressure on precious metals because the rarity buffer is there to lessen that downward pressure. And in fact, there are many numismatic coins that can and do appreciate even when this price of precious metals is going south. Numismatics is a different kettle of fish. Numismatics is designed to be held for a longer period of time. The minimum time horizon that we recommend is a minimum of 5 to 10 years. But it is potentially more conservative asset class than precious metals, and it has sometimes less volatility as well.
It's almost like artwork, correct?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, people, investors, and collectors as well, look to numismatic coins because of their rarity factor, because of their artistic appeal, because of their significance for American sculpture. Some of the portfolios that we put together for our clients, for example, on the numismatic side, contain coins with current populations of fewer than 100 in existence. That's not uncommon. In many cases, we have constructed portfolios for clients with coins with populations of fewer than 10, and we have several of our clients that currently own numismatic coins that are the finest known. So, depending upon the client's needs, depending upon their risk tolerance, depending upon their time horizon, numismatic coins can be a very, very beneficial addition to a well-constructed portfolio. In a perfect world, I love to see portfolios that contain both asset classes, both precious metals and numismatics. In my opinion, if the client is suitable, in my opinion, a portfolio constructed such as that covers all the bases. You have a short-term vehicle on the precious metal side of the street. If there's a military calamity that takes place, a terrorist attack, an economic piece of news that comes about, you can bet lunch that the price of gold is going to tick up. Precious metals, I think, are ideally suited for short to a medium term hold. On the longer term, numismatics can play an important role as well. And if the client is suitable, I think to have a client positioned on both sides of the street, as I mentioned, pretty much covers all the bases for any economic, political, military event that happens to take place, while also putting that client in a very, very, very favorable position as a safe haven vehicle with a growth potential as well.
with those pneumatic coins, now if a
Mhm.
crisis does happen like you're talking about, do they retain
Right.
value, or are you going to be selling them like I would a silver eagle to someone? You know what I mean? Like if
Right.
shit does hit the fan, what is
Yeah.
your opinion on the pneumatics? Is it like, you know what I mean? What is the big difference really? You're
Right.
not going to want to sell your rare coin, giving it away for food or whatever.
Correct. The liquidation, the liquidity, Alex, of both precious metals and numismatics is extremely strong. Both can be liquidated at any time for their current market value. Um, in the extreme situation that you just described, um, the correct types of numismatic coins, although they may see market fluctuations, all markets do fluctuate. No markets go straight up all the time. The numismatic market has seen steady appreciation over the years for the right types of numismatic coins. And I'm talking about the extremely high quality pieces, strictly original coins with a very high rarity factor. It's kind of somebody once made the correlation to me. It's unlikely that the value of the Mona Lisa is going to drop because of the price of paint goes down. And
I still don't understand the beauty behind the Mona Lisa, by the way. I don't think.
and it's true. And the same thing can be said for classic United States rarities. United States numismatic coins are the blue chips, if you will, in the world numismatic marketplace. The demand is very strong, not only here in the United States, but internationally as well. There are always investors, always collectors who are out there looking for the best of the best. There are always collectors looking to acquire the finest of the finest, the finest known. And that's pretty much regardless of the economy. Now, it is true that in extreme economic conditions, you may see the market kind of focusing its attention on the precious metal side of the street. Precious metals have been extremely popular, as you might imagine, over the last several years and continue to be so. But that's not to say that there are not opportunities on the numismatic side as well. Right.
Donald, first of all, it's nice to put a face to the name. You know, we always wrote through emails. I've never actually met
Absolutely.
a person.
It's very nice to meet you as well, Vinci. I know we go back and forth all the time during the course of a week, and it's very nice to equate a face with a name as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So going back to the gold and silver prices, what do you think has the biggest influence on these prices? Like, any do you think is the biggest thing?
I think that's a very good question, because sometimes people lump gold and silver together, and platinum too, for that matter. But they're very different assets. I think that gold is primarily a financial vehicle. I think investors, institutions, and central banks look to gold for financial purposes, as a safe haven, as a vehicle that has appreciation potential when the economy is under stress. And I think for those reasons, you more often than not see gold respond during times of crisis. Silver, on the other hand, has a history of riding the popularity of gold. When gold rises, historically, silver kind of follows suit because they're both tangible assets. But silver has more of a industrial-based appeal. Silver is used in many industries, the automobile industry, the medical industry, technology industry, to be sure. But I think, gold has more of a financial basis, more of a financial appeal, more of a financial solution, whereas the appeal for silver is based primarily as an industrial solution in many cases.
Right.
So we were talking about that a little bit earlier today amongst us, Donald. So the United States is going to be returning, I would say, to the industrial side of the world, where semiconductors, manufacturing, mining, a lot of that stuff is going to come back home.
Yeah.
So that might make the case for obviously a silver allocation. And can you share with people really the fundamental difference between investing in these physical assets and these tangible physical commodities versus trying to buy an ETF like GLD, SLB, IEU, and all that good stuff?
That is a really good point. That is a really good question. Because a lot of investors don't know the difference, or a lot of investors don't think there's a difference between the physical asset and the paper product. Let me back up a little bit. Many paper forms of precious metals are extremely highly leveraged. When an investor allocates into this asset class, Tim, as you know, they are looking to hedge against the stress that can be placed on the financial markets. For an investor to get back and invest in gold or silver in a paper form, you're getting right back into the same asset class that you're looking to diversify away from at the get-go. It doesn't accomplish the goal at hand. If financial assets are under pressure, you're likely to see gold, silver, and ETFs also under pressure and not perform as well as the physical option. I mentioned a few moments ago, the paper form of precious metals can be highly leveraged. There are many ETFs out there that do not necessarily have all of the physical backing for their investors. As a matter of fact, I read earlier this morning that right now there are approximately 200 to 250 ounces of paper gold that is traded every day on the COMEX futures exchange for every 1 ounce of silver, of of gold. Think of that for a while. Put it another way, there are 249 people out there who think they own gold, but own nothing at all.
That's right.
Versus the one that owns the physical. It's a very, very leveraged, very high risk type of investment asset. Now, I do see one benefit to paper gold and silver, and that is for the speculator. For the individual who wants to get into the market on a Monday and get out on a Tuesday, because the cost of that transaction is lower than the cost of the transaction to purchase the physical.
Sure.
But for the individual who was looking to diversify their investment portfolio into an asset class that will provide them a safe haven, that will perform well when financial assets are under pressure, hands down, nothing beats the real thing. Nothing beats taking possession, physical possession, of the gold, silver, and platinum on your own.
Donald, I had a question for you. How would you then recommend young people who might not have a lot to invest in numismatics and commodities and gold and silver?
Right. It's a very good question. Everybody has to start off somewhere, Alex.
Right.
And, although there may be some numismatic coins that are out of their financial reach at this point in time, there are others that I'm sure definitely are within reach. The same thing applies to gold or silver. I know we were talking earlier about gold American Eagles. It is true that right now the spot price of gold is hovering around $2,000 an ounce. Actually, this morning was up a little bit higher than that. But American Eagles are minted in a variety of what is called fractional denominations. There are half-ounce denominations, quarter-ounce denominations, and 10th-ounce denominations. 10th-ounce denominations are affordable by almost everybody. So there are ways for young people to get involved in this asset class, to start a portfolio, to build that portfolio. And as I mentioned before, we manage our clients' portfolio. So as the value of that portfolio increases, we can perhaps make recommendations to divest from one form into some rarer items or larger denominations and so forth. But there are many opportunities available to young people right now with a relatively small budget to engage in both the precious metals on numismatic sides.
So the people who are weary, what would you say some downsides, if any, are there in investing in gold, silver, and numismatics?
On the numismatic side, I think if there is a downside, it is that, as I mentioned earlier, numismatics are designed for a longer term hold, a minimum of 5 to 10 years. If an investor does not have that time horizon with which they can work, then numismatics is not for them. They should concentrate more on the precious metals side of the street. As far as precious metals are concerned, I think that maybe one caveat that I would warn investors about, particularly given the current economic environment where everybody is so worried and the anxiety level is so high, that would be over allocating into this area. As you and Tim, I'm sure agree. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure you would agree that diversification is the proper approach to constructing any investment strategy. And to be aggressively over allocated into any one particular asset class isn't necessarily the prudent thing to do. Right now, as I mentioned, people are nervous, and allocating 100% of somebody's assets or an exceptionally large percentage of their assets into precious metals may not be advisable right now. We're living in a very, very volatile world. So I think that would be a caveat. But I do feel that in virtually all cases, the inclusion of precious metals and or numismatics is absolutely in investors' best interest to allocate a percentage of that portfolio into their overall investment strategy. That percentage, of course, can vary from one person to another. Routinely, over the years, we've recommended somewhere between 5 to 15% or so. Right now, given the current economy, we've seen some clients allocate a larger percentage, but working with you and working with Tim to determine what is in that client's best interest, what percentage works best for them, we can then construct a portfolio that will put them in a very positive spot.
Right. And going back to the asset allocation, I think most people and even financial planners have fallen asleep at the wheel on this, right? Because everyone thinks that I have stocks, bonds, and cash, and that's my asset allocation. Well, you have 3 asset classes. Actually, you have 2. Well, now they're all tied together, so you have 1 asset class. So you're not diversified, right?
You're right, Tim.
So, what Harry Markowitz came out with, I think, has been bastardized by the industry.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more.
And we've gotten really, really far away from how people should be invested, and now the rubber's hitting the road on that a little bit. But I think that's a good point. I think the other point too is you have to always be aware of the constraints of things, right? Like you just can't say, hey, and we have this conversation all the time because all of us on here are crypto friendly too, and we're like, hey, you know what? I'm not taking 100% of my money and putting it in Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's not the prudent thing to do. But if you're favoring something, you can weight it more than you can other areas.
Absolutely. But that sophistication requires a knowledgeable individual or team like yourself and your team at Twin Shores, where sometimes investors shoot themselves in the foot is, again, they go out and make vitally important financial decisions without necessarily having the knowledge and expertise to do so, and wind up shooting themselves in the foot as a result.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I think we have a little bit of a specialty too, because, in our structure, we obviously manage a lot of our clients' finances, but we also get people who have other advisors and they just can't do and don't do. They don't have the capacity, whatever. When we're stuck in these channels like Merrill Morgan, Edward Jones, and all that, you don't have access to this through.
That's correct.
Through those captured channels.
That's right.
And then you have to go into the independent world to try to find it.
That's correct. In many cases, there are financial firms out there that have their own business model. And their business model is to recommend a certain select group of securities. That's what their model is. Yeah. That may be good. That may be good for those financial institutions, and not necessarily good for the client, however.
Oh no, Donald, it's very good for the financial institution.
Exactly. Your model.
When you see the inside of those profit ledgers, man, you're like, real.
Absolutely. Your model of stocks, bonds, and cash was great 40 years ago. A lot has transpired in the markets over the last 40 years. A lot has transpired in the markets since 2008, since the financial crisis. And those days of stocks, bonds, and cash are long gone. You have international central banks now that rely heavily on allocating into the physical possession, in many cases, of gold. China, for example, Russia, many other countries are stockpiling gold as a safe haven, and in some cases to increase the appeal of their currency in the open market, to make their currency attractive because it is backed by something that people value. And as it is, as tangible assets are appealing to international central banks as a portfolio diversifier, as a mitigator to risk, as a long-term storage of value, as an inflation hedge, as a de-dollarization strategy. Those same benefits that national central banks now are clamoring for are the same benefits that can be provided to individual investors.
So, Donald, we were talking about, because you've been out on the road quite a bit for the past couple of months.
Yeah.
And something that you shared with me that stood out and caught my attention was, when you're meeting with the heads of some of these big financial firms, broker dealers, et cetera, you're noticing a common theme that they all seem pretty nervous about something coming, what's happening now. And it almost feels like it's almost like a running for the hills. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. You're right. I do my share of traveling for my position here at the company, and I enjoy it very much. I like getting out and meeting people personally and kind of drilling down and getting a better feel for what's on their mind. And whether it be the most conservative financial firm that you could possibly imagine, or financial firms that are more aggressive in their stances, I think everybody now understands and is concerned about what they're seeing. Again, whether it be bank failures, whether it be the threat of the U.S. dollar to continue its current status as the go-to currency for international trade, or the national debt, or inflation, or the list is long and distinguished.
Yeah, right.
People are concerned. People are worried. Some people feel that these problems are going to come home to roost sooner. Some people feel these problems are going to come home to roost later. But many people that I speak to believe that there are major problems out there, and the problems are going to come home to roost at some point in time. And it's undeniable. All you need to do is pick up the Wall Street Journal, every day, and read the headlines, read different stories, pick up various financial publications, and you walk away, scratching your head. I had a situation this morning here in Massachusetts where one of the two major healthcare providers in the state of Massachusetts, their parent company was just hacked with ransomware, to the point now where individuals, consumers, are being told to keep close eye on your credit card balances, keep a close eye on your bank statements, keep a close eye on your debit accounts, because there was a lot of confidential financial and health information that was hacked by this financial or healthcare organization. Could that happen in the financial world? You better believe it could. And what happens then?
Right. And that was even the Silicon Valley Bank. You get the rhetoric on the television. Oh, it happened, and, it's because of crypto and venture capital and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, man, there were a lot of everyday people, because I know a couple friends of mine had money in the bank, and they didn't have access to their money for at least 3 to 4 days. And even that happened during COVID, right? Especially if you're downtown like a city in Boston, and everyone went on lockdown, including banks, and have access to your cash. You don't have access to your ATM.
Right.
A lot of people out there, how are they going to buy groceries?
Right. Exactly. One of the things that I have observed over the years, and I think it's unfortunate, is that when you bring the subject of gold and silver up onto the table, for reasons that I don't quite understand, it generates in some people an emotional response, like, oh, you think the world is coming to an end, or you look at things with the glass half empty. I look at things more with the glass half full, and I think things are going to work out, and so on and so forth. Which I hope they're right. But what I am saying is this: don't you think that it is in most investors' best interest to include an asset class into their investment mix that is going to provide them with stability during times when financial assets are under stress? Whether you view gold as one of those gold bugs, one of those extremists, or not, I feel that it is in virtually everybody's best interest to have an asset class in their investment strategy that will complement all of the other asset classes in that portfolio, that will provide them with stability when those other asset classes are under pressure.
Right. Well, and you could just look at the periodic table of asset performance over the past 30 years, and every single downturn we have, gold's always at the top, always at the top.
Absolutely.
And now in our world, we're having larger collapses at faster frequencies.
That's right.
So it makes
I was
sense
reading
to have some in your portfolio.
Right. I was reading this morning an excellent article about the benefits of gold, and I will read this to you. Quote: gold's unique attributes as a scarce, highly liquid, and uncorrelated asset enables it to act as a diversifier over the long term. Gold's position as an investment and a luxury good has allowed it to deliver annual returns of nearly 8% since 1971, comparable to equities and more than bonds and commodities. Gold's traditional role as a safe haven asset means it comes into its own during times of high risk. But its dual appeal as an investment and consumer good means it can generate positive returns in good times too. This dynamic is likely to continue, reflecting ongoing political and economic uncertainty and economic concerns surrounding equity and bond markets. I thought that was pretty good conclusion.
Where was that article from?
Actually, it was an article that was produced by the World Gold Council. They just produced a new brochure, The Relevance of Gold as a Strategic Asset, 2023. It was very well researched, great publication, and it came from that source.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Well, I think that's a lot of what we wanted to cover. On behalf of Twin Shores Financial, thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast episode and want to continue learning on how to become more financially free, please tune in next week for another episode. Don't forget to like, share, and follow us on all of our social media platforms. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, please don't forget to follow us. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Tim, Alex, Fency, Donald, any last words?
No, I'd just like to thank you all very much again for inviting me to participate today. Had a great time and discussing a subject matter that I find to be very exciting, and I hope your listeners enjoyed it as well.
Well, thank you for coming on to the podcast, Donald. I'm sure the viewers are going to hear the passion you have in your voice on this topic and really do their own research based on just what you've been saying.
Outstanding.
Tim, any last words?
I would just say for more information or want to learn more about this, just contact us through twinshoresfinancial.com.
Fantastic.